Hey everyone, Jacob Godar with Scooters Lawn Care. Today we're going to talk about how to not get screwed by your landscaper. I hear this all the time. I've seen this happen in Illinois. I've seen this happen in our Florida location. It really kills me. I've showed up to a project where the project is not done. People are thinking that, hey, they're never going to come back. They've torn everything out and we're just left here to pick up the pieces. And that is a horrible, horrible feeling for a homeowner, especially if they have put out a bunch of money. I want to give you some tricks and some tips to keep you away from doing that. These are 6 points that are going to save you a lot of time. Number one, do your research. And research to me looks like looking at the company and looking at the Google reviews. I always like looking at hey, the newest to see if they've just started getting a rash of bad reviews. And then I like to look at the lowest because I like to pick through the lowest. Sometimes you'll see, wow, their score is really, really low and there's a lot of legitimate low ones. Sometimes you look at someone's reviews and all the low ones are, well, they were more expensive than I wanted, or there were things that doesn't deem any reason to have a bad review. People just didn't like a thing, a lot of times doing with money, and it is what it is. So look and do your research on the company. Do your research on the reviews. Look at every platform that you can find them on where someone could have said and gave you some idea of what the company is going to be like to work with, because typically if you see people that are 4.5 or higher, they're getting, and if they've got a substantial amount of reviews, if they've got 2 reviews and one is bad and one is good, that doesn't mean as much. But if they got 50, 60, 100 plus, and a lot of them are good, you've got a good idea that a company's going in the right direction. But that little trick I said about making sure you're looking at the newest and seeing if you just started to get a rash of bad reviews, that could be an indication of a company changing, doing something different, sold out, or has some kind of different management that could really be problematic to your project. So that's one of the biggest ones. I've seen a lot of people not look at Google reviews and have just a horrible job. My dad did this with a roof and it really caused him a huge heartache and a lot of stress and a lot of extra damage to his house. I want to save everyone from things like that. Number 2, clear communication. This is big. You're going to want to make sure when you're going out and you're doing a landscape project with a contractor that there's clear communication. That means you can understand their vision through design and or how they talk. They can understand what you want. So you want to have very similar expectations of what this final project is going to be like. And you can get this through looking at past work photos of them showing you examples, really trying to talk and make sure we're all on the same page. Because there's been a lot of times I've seen people, hey, I want new plants, and you end up with annual plants and then they last for a few months versus perennials that last all year. And now all of a sudden the expectations were here and reality was here. Now you have an issue and now you're let down. It may have been what they thought you wanted, or it may have been a thing to try to save a bunch of money and try to make more profit and really mislead you on what the product you are getting. So be clear in the communication. Make sure you understand, make sure they understand what ultimately the end goal needs to be. Number 3, this is big, written contracts. Ours are more of an agreement with a scope of work. So just something in writing on what's going to be getting done, the cost, and how all of that lays out. This is huge because if you want a bunch of stuff done, and it doesn't have to be detailed down to the rock and where it's going, but if you've got different line items, think about sod going in, irrigation going in, this going in. You want to make sure that the things that are important to you are listed in that detail, in that scope. So in that contract, when you sign on that, it's all there and it's all laid out. There's nothing worse than doing a handshake and it being on a napkin and it's all off of word, but there's no written word. And now if anybody goes to question, it's a he said, she said. This is best for the company and for the homeowner if this can be black and white anytime there's an issue. And there are issues. There are times where stuff comes up and you have to hash that out and figure out the best way. And it's always best to be able to go back and point at this and be like, oh, hey, you guys forgot something. We forgot something. Let's correct this and move forward. So a clear contract, clear scope of work, clear agreement on what is getting done on the service. Number 4, this is huge. I've seen this a lot. I've seen this everywhere. This isn't just Florida. This isn't just Illinois. This is everywhere. And that is beware of prepayments. Now, you should expect a legitimate contractor to charge some kind of payment, but you shouldn't expect a legitimate contractor to be taking all of the payment or the majority of the payment before they even start the job. Us, for example, we do 10% down, then depending on the side of the job, we do 50% of the remaining amount when we start and the other 50 when we finish. If the job is above 10,000 but under 50,000, then it's 10% down in thirds, and then 10% down in quarters depending on how big the job gets. And you shouldn't expect to be paid all the way through, but have seen very little progress on the job. That is a key indicator that something is going wrong. If somebody is wanting 80% of the money, 90% of the money, 100% of the money up front, I would be very, very leery, and I would want to make sure that if they did want that I really did my homework on them to make sure they were a legitimate company. 5, we're getting there. We're almost through these. Check for qualifications. This is licenses, insurance, permits. Try to look at a portfolio. Try to look at other jobs. This could be like when we hire an employee. You want to ask for a reference. Give me someone that I can speak to that you've done work for before, because I want to speak to them and ask them how that service has been. I would love if every homeowner did that to us, because it would save you a lot of time and you a lot of heartache, because that saved us so much time with hiring. That's what I always do when I'm trying to hire somebody for any kind of service, whether it be marketing, whether it be electrical. I want a reference to how this has been for somebody else that has used you, because that's going to save me time. I'm just going to go to someone who's already had you work for them before, and now it's almost like you're using a past person that you've done a good job for, and they are becoming a referral source for you just by validating, give you social proof, again, that I can ask questions on and make sure everything is okay. So make sure they've got their qualifications. Probably try to check on a reference. It's going to save you a lot of heartache. Now, finally, number 6. I didn't get the number right. Number 6, as the project is going, you're going to want to check in. Meaning, as the project is moving forward, you're going to want to check in, see how it's progressing, and make sure that if you see anything wrong, you mention it now. It's much easier to fix problems that you see, or some kind of, hey, this is looking different than what we talked about, the scope, the plan, the layout, whatever. It's much easier to address that now than at the very end, because it could cause a lot of unwinding and it could cause a big riff in what gets done. So if everybody is always looking and checking, the company itself is checking, the company itself is checking with the guys and using the right documentation to make sure they know exactly what to do. The company itself is checking with the team and using the right documentation and making sure they know what to do. Then you are checking along with the progress that needs to be made and verifying if something needs to change, it gets changed ASAP. So these 6 tips are going to save you a lot of time to not end up being screwed by your contractor, ending up in a situation where 1, you didn't get what you want, 2, you got a project started but you've been left, 3, you've given a bunch of money to somebody and now they left you. All these problems that you hear, the horror stories, you can save yourself a lot of that grief if you just go through this list. You just make this stuff happen to make sure you don't get screwed by your landscaper. Again, Jacob with Scooters Lawn Care, creating a luxurious everyday life. We look forward to serving more clients just like you.